Let's bring in next Jamil Jaffers, who is the founder and executive director of the National Security Institute. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's just start sort of big picture. We touched on the fact that this designation is different than the one that the Houthi rebels had from the United States in the past. What does this terrorist designation mean in a practical sense?
Yeah, look, essentially there are two types of designations. There are more, but the two types we're talking about here are the specially designated terrorist group. That's what we've now named the Houthis, and the foreign terrorist organization designation. They were previously designated by the Trump administration, both of those things. And then the Biden administration withdrew both of those designations early on in its time in office. Now they've added that first one back on. Essentially what that means is their financial transactions are blocked now as a specially designated global terrorist, but you can still provide them with certain things, including what would be barred under the foreign terrorist organization designation, and that would be material support. The U.S. government's also granted a bunch of licenses allowing the provision of email services, financial transactions, and the like of a certain limited variety to the Houthis in an effort to address the potential humanitarian concerns that some groups have raised.
So weakening Houthis financing their capabilities, it's a pretty complex thing, right? I mean, not only because they are backed by funds coming from Iran, but because the movement of weapons in the Middle East can be difficult to track. And when we're talking about that, we're also talking about the movement of weapons in the area from the United States, right? Is there any chance that the U.S., this designation, that it could have some sort of reverse impact or some sort of thing they didn't expect where something goes wrong here?
Well, we've had a lot of experience in using both the specially designated global terrorist designation and the FTO designation. We've been using the FTO designation since the 90s. Hamas, Hezbollah were some of the early groups that were designated under that authority and have remained that way for now almost 24 years. So this is not unusual for us to use these type of designations. What is different here about the situation is that you're right about the supply of weapons coming in from Iran and Iran's support. And at the end of the day, what it's really going to take to get the Houthis to stop doing what they're doing is for Iran to pay the price. And they've not been feeling the price. To the contrary, U.S. shipping, global shipping has paid the price. And we just saw potentially 2 U.S. Navy SEALs who are now still missing, whose lives may have been lost in the effort to interdict Iranian weapons going to these very Houthi rebels.
So, Jamil, what is the impact of a designation like this on civilians in Yemen? I mean, Yemen is a country that has been at war for years and years. It is arguably the worst humanitarian crisis in the world right now. What will this mean for the people who live there, the most vulnerable civilians who are already struggling to get access to basic things like food?
Well, the Houthis control a significant chunk of territory in Yemen. They're on sort of the west coast of Yemen, the coast that borders the Red Sea, including the capital. Government controls other parts of Yemen, but that significantly populated part of Yemen is controlled by the Houthis. And so this designation should, in fact, have an impact on the finances of the Houthis themselves, less of an impact on the Yemeni people there. And of course, the government can always create exceptions to any of these designations it makes. It's already done so with these 5 licenses. So we'll see how this plays out. At the end of the day, though, designations and financial sanctions are one thing. Limited strikes against them are another. Strikes that really respond to make the Iranian backers of Houthis feel the price and feel the penalty for this is really what it will take to get the Houthis to stop doing this. At the end of the day, they're just a proxy, a cat's paw for the Iranian forces, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard's Quds Force.
Jamil Jaffer, thank you so much. We appreciate your time and insight.